Today we're going to be testing the 3 Shrapnel helms, the Gas Tight Helmet, the Beret, and the Cage Helmet. We are going to go through how these 3 different Shrapnel helms work, how do they perform and what they do. The Beret has a Shrapnel hit part +1, Gas Tight Helmet has max Shrapnel target parts 1, Shrapnel damage 120%, and Cage Helmet has a Shrapnel trigger count +1. So we first have to understand how Shrapnel works. If you right click on the gun, click details, click X on I keyword. Shrapnel is a keyword for your Shrapnel gun. So this will be very important later on. Just remember this. Upon hitting an enemy with a bullet, you deal 50% attack as weapon damage. Now it says to a different random part. This means that on any gun that you use, Shrapnel will trigger once. Whether it's the Dusty pistol, whether it's the Div Evo MP7, or the AK, or the Scar. This will matter later on and I will explain it. So let's start with the Dusty pistol. If you check our weapon features, you can see that the Dusty pistol does not have any additional Shrapnel trigger parts. All it does is just, it has 55% chance to trigger Shrapnel when hitting a weak spot. So now if I shot the Dusty without any key part helms, we're gonna trigger only 1 Shrapnel in the head, as you can see. Only 1 Shrapnel procs. Let's start with the simple one, the Beret, which everyone can easily get by completing a side quest in the Manibus server. So now we have a keyword that triggers 1 base Shrapnel, and what triggers the base Shrapnel is the gun itself. 1 base Shrapnel. And once it's there, it's gonna sit there. That's it. Without any helmets, you get 1 base Shrapnel. Let's call them base Shrapnel because it actually matters how you call this. Next, if we wear the Beret, it gives you 1 Shrapnel hit part. I'm marking it green because that's the color I'm gonna mark hit part. So if there's 1 base Shrapnel, the hit part will add to it. In this case, we take this hit part over here. It has 1 base Shrapnel, or it has 1 trigger here. So that's why it's gonna go to this trigger. And it's just going to add 1 to that. So now we have 2 Shrapnels hitting with Dusty. If there was another trigger coming from somewhere, if it was the gun passive triggering it, then the Shrapnel would do the same thing. It would add right there and make another Shrapnel hit part, which would we have now 4 parts of Shrapnel. But of course, Dusty does not do that. It does not have that passive to trigger another base Shrapnel. So that's why we get only 2 Shrapnels hitting. That's how Beret works. It's that simple. Next, let's cover what the Cage Helmet does. So if I shoot with the Dusty in the head, we will trigger 2 Shrapnel procs. Same as the Beret, right? Well, technically, no, it's not the same. Yes, you trigger 2 Shrapnels, it's the same, but the mechanic is different. So what Cage does is just triggers another base Shrapnel for you, which goes from here. As you can see, it says Shrapnel trigger count +1. So all it does is just triggers a base Shrapnel. Now, if you were using Beret or Cage Helmet, obviously your damage will be the same, but you will just have 2 base Shrapnels instead of 1 base Shrapnel and 1 hit part. So it's completely the same thing. It doesn't matter what you use, Beret or Cage Helmet. Both serve the same purpose because you obviously have 2 Shrapnel hits. We will get to this later though, what the triggers and procs do. You will understand soon enough. Another thing the Cage Helmet does is it increases the trigger count by 1. So instead of needing 20 Shrapnels to proc, you will need only 10 Shrapnels. Now lastly, let's test the Gas Tight Helmet and how it works. It says max Shrapnel target parts is 1. What it really does is it makes your Shrapnel hit parts 0. If we shoot the dummy, we will deal only 1 Shrapnel to the dummy. As you can see, 1. Now moving on to the Gas Tight Helmet. It does not add any additional Shrapnel parts. It does not do that. All it does, it just removes all hit parts from all base Shrapnels. And as you know, there's no hit parts. Because all Dusty does, it just triggers 1 Shrapnel proc over here. That's why you see only 1 Shrapnel hitting the dummy. So really, the Gas Tight Helmet does nothing for the Dusty other than increase 120 Shrapnel damage. And now, this is important to know. This Shrapnel damage is a separate multiplier that is hidden in the stats. That comes only from the helm itself. So you cannot increase it with mods. You just get that 120 and it's sitting there as a multiplier. You cannot like increase it or decrease it or get rid of it until you remove the helmet. So that's, you'll basically do double the damage as if you have 2 Shrapnels, except you will get an additional 20%. And that's all Gas Tight Helmet does. This description, however, it says max Shrapnel target parts 1, trying to say that that 1 is the base shrapnel right here. However, this description will mislead other players and you will see soon why. We will get into that soon. The next weapon we're going to test is going to be the MG4 Conflicting Memories. So I already made a build video about explaining this gun. However, I explained the shrapnel hit bars completely wrong because I was recording the video at 6 a.m. and my brain was literally... I thought that tier 1 and tier 5 helms actually gave a +1 shrapnel hit bar, but it actually didn't. So that was a mistake that I fixed in the pinned comments. But really now we're going to go through Beret, Cage Helmet, and Gas Tight, and I will show you what they do and how it works to clear up the confusion. So let's start first with no helm. So how this gun works is it will get more shrapnel hit parts as more magazine capacity you have, up to 4, which in total you can get 5 without the helm, and I will show you. So right now I'm gonna equip any helmet just so I can get a mag expansion on it. Let's put a mag expansion so we can get some more magazine size, and I have to reload the gun on 0 bullets. So now we will have 170 or something, 185 bullets, okay? We need 161 bullets to get 4 shrapnel hit parts. Again, if you read this gun's passive, it doesn't trigger shrapnels or anything. It only gets +4 hit parts. 1 shrapnel proc comes from the keyword suffix over here. So now let's shoot the dummy 12 times. Boom. And you can see we triggered 5 shrapnels. The reason for this is just because we have above 160 magazine capacity. Now let's test the Beret. I'm going to put it on. And I'm going to put a mag expansion mod so we can get more magazine size. Now we have 192, so when we shoot with the Beret, we get 6 shrapnel. Now for the MG4, this is going to be a little bit different, but of course, you can see that it triggers shrapnel, and that shrapnel is going together with the arrow here. Now you will get additional hit parts from the gun's passive for every 15 magazine capacity. The description is wrong. It's every 15 magazine, you get 4 hit parts, which is this, and this maximum is 4 hit parts. Now 4 + 1 is going to be 5 because you get 4 hit parts plus the shrapnel base here. Now of course if you wear the Beret, then you're going to get another +1 hit part. We already know what Beret does. It just adds 1 shrapnel part to every shrapnel base. Let's take this arrow and just paint it over here. We get 1 shrapnel hit part over here from Beret. That's done. Now we have 2 shrapnels hitting. And if your magazine is above 160, or if you have 161 magazine capacity, the gun will give you 4 additional hit parts because you have enough magazine capacity for that. So that will be 1 hit part, 2, 3, and 4 from the gun's passive over here. So in total you will hit 6 shrapnels. And that's it for Beret. Next up, we're going to test the Cage Helmet. So if you have the Cage Helmet and you have maximum ammo above 160, you will trigger total 10 shrapnels after the proc. Look at that. So many shrapnels. Now with Cage, it's a different scenario because what is going to happen is the gun triggers 4 hit parts, of course, and the Cage Helmet will add +1 base shrapnel, which is going to go here. Now, when it gets added over here, think of it as this, that each base shrapnel will need its own parts. So since the gun gives 4 hit parts, that means a base shrapnel will have 4 hit parts. And you can easily tell this, by the way, when you shoot the dummy in game, when shrapnels proc, numbers appear in one spot and then like numbers separate from each spot like this. And then you see numbers going all the way across the screen. So this is the same logic here. Since we have 4 hit parts, we're gonna get 4 hit parts right here. And then the same thing happens from the other base shrapnel that we have here. You get 4 hit parts. However many triggers there is, these triggers have to have their own hit parts. Now let's say the Cage Helmet was buffed by 1 trigger. So instead of 1, it would trigger 2 base shrapnels, right? Then that would trigger another base shrapnel. And of course, we need hit parts for that. So these 4 hit parts would have to go again on that base shrapnel here. However, we only wish Cage Helmet was buffed like that. That would be too OP. This is 1 hit, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. Now we're gonna test the Gas Tight Helmet. Let's shoot 12 times and see. You trigger only 1 shrapnel. This Gas Tight Helmet is completely garbage for this MG4. MG4's damage mainly comes from the shrapnel parts. So Cage Helmet is the best for that. And why we're getting one shrapnel part only is because, not because it says shrapnel target parts 1, is because just always remember the keyword triggers 1 shrapnel. That's what the keyword is. With the gas tight, what's going to happen on the MG4? So since the MG4 has 4 hit parts, that comes obviously from the passive here, the gas tight helmet will remove all of them, meaning you'll get only 1 base shrapnel. The next gun we have is the Shrapnel Scar. We are going to do a test without any helmet. So let's see how many shrapnels do we trigger. We triggered only 1 shrapnel. However, when you crit, you get 2 shrapnels instead. See? 1 and 2. The reason for that is because the Shrapnel Scar has a passive. Critical hits grant +1 shrapnel trigger times for 1 second. So in that 1 second time of period, you can get an additional shrapnel proc. Now, it's a trigger, not a hit part. That is extremely important for this gun. Let's get right into the testing of the helmets. Let's put on Beret. You can see 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now if you do not crit, you will hit only 2 shrapnels. Take a look at this. Boom, only 1 and 2 shrapnels hitting the target. 1 and 2. But when you crit, you get 4. That's the weapon's passive. Bada bing, drop an arrow, and the circle. And you can see it's orange. It's not green, it's orange. And what happens when we have base shrapnels? It needs hit parts. What does the Beret do? It adds hit parts, +1. So it goes over here, boom, makes a hit part. And of course, it needs to go here too. Makes another hit part. And when you shoot with Beret, you trigger 1, 2, 3, and 4 shrapnel parts. Now, let's test the Cage Helmet. So the Cage Helmet will hit only 3 shrapnels on the dummy. 1, 2, 3. And now only 2. So the Cage Helmet will hit 3 shrapnels, 1, 2, and 3, when critting, and it hits only 2 shrapnels when it does not crit. Now you can see that we have 3 shrapnel parts hitting the dummy. Cage Helmet, all it does is just triggers 1 base shrapnel, and that's about it. That's why we get only 3 and not 4, because there's no hit parts. It's only base shrapnels triggering, and that's all there is to it. That's why Cage Helmet is 3 and Beret is 4. And this is the reason why Beret does more damage, because there's less shrapnel parts with Cage Helmet. However, when you shoot the dummy and when you proc shrapnel, you will increase the explosive shrapnel proc by 3 points, because you're triggering 1, 2, and 3 shrapnels. Simple enough. So instead of needing 20 shrapnel procs to, proc explosive shrapnel, you'll need way, way less. Lastly, the Gas Tight Helmet for this Shrapnel Scar. Now, if you use the Gas Tight, you will trigger only 1 shrapnel without critting, but when you crit, you get 2. So look at this. You can see we get only 1 without crit, or without the passive crit trigger activating. And now when we crit, we will get max 2 shrapnel hits. 1 and 2. And lastly, the Gas Tight Helmet. What does it do? It does nothing, because there's no hit parts for the gun. So it just leaves it be and leaves the base shrapnels sitting there, and you will always deal 2 shrapnel hits with the Gas Tight. However, you will get that 120% shrapnel damage. The SMG MP7, it has a chance to trigger shrapnel, and it gets a +1 shrapnel target if you hit in the weak spot for 4 seconds. So normally if you trigger shrapnel in the body, you will get only 1 shrapnel hit, but if you shoot in the head, you will get 2 for 4 seconds. So every time you shoot in the head, you get an additional shrapnel hit, which is always going to be 2. 2 right there. Now it's a hit part, so that means if you wear the Cage Helmet, let's see what's going to happen. We're going to get 4 shrapnel hits. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Cage Helmet adds another base shrapnel, which means the passive will be able to utilize it and add another hit part for that shrapnel. So the passive will utilize the keyword base shrapnel right here and the Cage's base shrapnel. So it goes here too. We basically get 4 shrapnel hits, 1, 2, 3, and 4 with the Cage Helmet. If we tested the Beret here on this MP7, hitting in the head, we will get only 3 shrapnels. See? 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, and 3. But if we shot in the body, we will get only 2 shrapnels total. 1 and 2. Without any helm, we will get only 1 shrapnel hitting the body and 2 shrapnels when we hit in the head. The Div Evo does not have any triggers. All it has is hitting a weak spot grants shrapnel target parts plus 1. Now this description is old, it's supposed to say hit parts, but whatever. Target parts and hit parts is the same thing. If you check the gas helmet, it says target parts. And again, this description is wrong, because the target parts are actually 0, not 1. What they mean is base shrapnel. With the Beret helmet, with the Div Evo, you will trigger 3 shrapnel parts total. So what happens is this helmet will find a base shrapnel and add 1 hit part to it, which then will have now 2. And then of course we have the Div Evo passive. Hitting a weak spot, we'll get 1 hit part. So that goes all the way to this base shrapnel, and it will make another hit part. So in total we get 1, 2, and 3 shrapnels hitting with the Beret. Now if we wear the Gas Tight Helmet, we will trigger only 1 shrapnel when shooting in the body. There you go. If we shoot in the head, we will trigger 1 as well. As you can see, it removes all hit parts, which means it completely destroys the passive right here. So you basically do not even have this if you wear the Gas Tight Helmet. So your weapon turns into a nerfed state at this point. So I don't really suggest using Gas Tight for Div Evo, as you'll trigger only 1 shrapnel, which comes from the keyboard base shrapnel. Lastly, we have the KAM Pioneer AK. Without any helmet, shooting anywhere will trigger only 1 shrapnel, 1. As you can see, only 1 shrapnel is triggered. Wow, what a delay right there. And now if we wear Beret, we're gonna get 2 shrapnel parts when shooting in the body or shooting in the head. Blue AK does not have additional passives or triggering or hit parts, so max is 2. Even if you wear the Cage Helmet as well for the AK, you're still gonna get 2 shrapnels, because there's no passives, there's no additional passives for this gun. And if you wear the Gas Tight Helmet for the AK, 1. Also 1. Well, ladies and gents, that's it for this video. I hope this was helpful. See you guys in the next one. Take care and peace out.